What was the biggest waste of money in human history? $4 trillion to replace the Taliban with the Taliban gotta be up there. Mission accomplished. Bin Laden must be laughing in hell knowing he made the USA spend $4 trillion just to kill him. The USA spent $4 trillion to line the pockets of us arms manufacturers. The Swedish ship Vasa. The Vasa was built in the 1620s to take advantage of the very newest in warship technology, a second row of guns. It was to be a symbol of Sweden's might, and thus was decorated with beautiful statues and carvings. This ship took 3 years to build and cost roughly 5% of Sweden's GDP. Unfortunately, the effect of a second row of cannons on seaworthiness was poorly understood. With great fanfare, the ship set off, experienced its first breeze, and still within full view of the city of Stockholm, capsized and sank. After the incident, a trial was started to place the responsibility. The trial was terminated prematurely when it became apparent that the Swedish king had personally pushed many of the design decisions that eventually lead to the ship capsizing and sinking. Swedish king is like every startup CEO. Actually, that particular king, Gustavus Adolphus, was probably the greatest military mind that a European monarchy ever produced. He essentially invented combined arms a few hundred years before the rest of the world would catch up, and was the first Protestant participant in the 30 Years' War to really bloody the noses of the Catholics. Gustavus had more egalitarian political leanings than most, and unlike so many monarchs, seemed to actually spare a thought for the rights of the peasantry. Got to be that person who bought the first ever tweet as an NFT, purchased for $2.9 million, now worth about $4. I mean, if it's actually $4, I'll buy it just to be a part of history. Everyone everywhere ever is a part of history. Totally forgot about the NFT hype. That was a weird few months when a non-trivial number of people were trying to convince me a JPEG of a poorly drawn monkey was somehow worth more than a car. I'd have to say that gym membership I didn't cancel until 8 years after I moved away. How the fuck did you not notice the charges? My mate did this. Joined a gym in 2016, forgot. Joined a new gym in 2021 and realized he'd spent about £600 on a membership he'd literally used once. £600, $730, for 1 hour of using a gym. The CIA putting a microphone into a cat to spy on commies only for that cat to get hit by a car. I think it was like $6 million and countless years of preparation and training only to be lost under some tires. With what I know about cats, it can't be ruled out that the cat did it on purpose purely because it knew how much it would inconvenience the CIA agents. What fascinated me about Acoustic Kitten, the name of the operation, is that anyone that has spent 3 minutes with a cat will know all of this was a very, very stupid idea. I can only explain it having in account the amount of drugs the CIA was using in that moment. I imagine the cat purring exactly when the vital information is said. $35 billion for the metaverse. World's most expensive PR diversion, from Cambridge Analytica. Mark was really inspired by Ready Player One. I read this book last month, and it changed everything. Can't believe nobody has mentioned World War I. Literally all of the world's most wealthy nations completely financially ruining themselves and slaughtering a large proportion of their young men, and all of the historical consequences that followed over essentially nothing and achieving nothing except for a massive geopolitical regression with costs which we are arguably still reeling from today. It also caused World War II, with World War I being the root cause is probably the expensive endeavor in all of human history. Exactly. It was essentially one gigantic war with a 20-year recess. You can also see it as the genesis of nearly every single geopolitical problem of the modern era too. The consequences of that war is why things are the way they are now. I wish high school history classes did a better job of emphasizing this fact. It's usually just taught that it was a horrific war with trench fighting, and then it's a slight deviation into Prohibition and the Great Depression, then full force into WW2. Pretty much every facet of modern-day life can be linked back to WW1. WW2 is obvious, but Vietnam, pretty much everything in the Middle East, the rise and fall of the Soviet Union, the modern United States, the whole Israel-Palestine situation, it goes on and on. You can go further back and argue that WW1 was caused by the Napoleonic Wars destabilizing the monarchies and autocracies across Europe. The Darien scheme. For those who don't know, it was Scotland's attempt to set up a colony in Panama and link the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. About 20% of Scotland's wealth was thrown at it, and it completely failed in just 2 years. Turns out Scottish people do not survive long in the sun in the tropics. It's like Wicked Witch of the West getting splashed with water. To be fair, almost no one survives well in the Darien Gap, even today. However, the fact that the Company of Scotland felt it was really important to pack their luggage full of hats and Bibles definitely didn't help. The war on drugs. What could possibly go wrong with handing the manufacture, distribution, and retail of powerful, addictive drugs to organized crime? No one could have foreseen that being a problem. Drugs 1? Probably that Dutch guy who spent money buying tulips in 1636. Depends, you wanted to be the Dutch guy selling right before the crash, you did not want to be any of the Dutch guys selling after that. Most of Dubai's artificial islands. Let's just say Dubai and leave it at that. There was no other human project that was of a greater magnitude than the Reality Labs by Meta. For reference, it costs 4x more than the Apollo project so far, and it is only the beginning. Total cost of Meta's metaverse exceeded $100 billion in 2023. No other single project comes close to this. And it's shit. Reality Labs is a division of Meta Platforms Incorporated focused on developing virtual, VR, augmented, AR, and mixed reality, MR, technologies. Its main goal is to create innovative devices and applications that enhance social interactions and entertainment experiences for users. Reality Labs is responsible for products such as Oculus VR headsets and AR glasses, and it also conducts research in areas like computer vision and human-computer interaction, aiming to realize the concept of the metaverse, where virtual and physical worlds merge. Bailing out billion-dollar companies during COVID like Delta Airlines that charges me $50 to bring a bag on an airplane, instead of, training new doctors or fast-tracking those already in med school, or paying off their student loan debt. Also banks back in 2008. Cleveland Browns paying $250 million for Deshaun Watson. So, story time for non-Americans who don't know who Deshaun Watson is and why that number is so awful. The Cleveland Browns have long been one of the worst teams in the NFL. Several years, they finally made it back to the playoffs, thanks to the effort of one Baker Mayfield, another quarterback. However, Browns front office for some dumbass reason didn't want to retain Mayfield, and so decided to spend a $230 to $250 million contract on Deshaun Watson, as well as include several draft picks in that trade. At the time, Watson had been a quarterback for the Houston Texans, and in his prime was seen as a generational talent who could take a good team a Super Bowl. At the same time, allegations of sexual assault were springing up against Watson, totaling 20+ women. It doesn't matter if he was the best QB in history, that's awful PR and pissed off the entire NFL fanbase. Still, the Browns paid for him. Cut forward to 2025, and Baker Mayfield was able to make it to the playoffs with his new team Tampa Bay Buccaneers, even though they just lost, and Deshaun Watson has played fucking awful football. He's genuinely one of the worst quarterbacks out there, had been suspended for 11 games due to the allegations, and taken numerous major injuries since getting signed, his most recent one tearing his ACL, which knocks you out for the season. Before the Watson trade, the Browns were seen as a team people pitied, because it felt like they could never catch a break each and every year. Now, they are a reviled fanbase, and I don't see their reputation ever recovering until every single person involved with that trade is fired and out of the organization. Small edit addition: his contract is fully guaranteed. The only way for the Browns to void it is if he either medically retires, or he's convicted accused of another sexual crime outside of the 20+ they knew about before he was signed. The Great Wall of Gorgon, built by the ancient Sasanian Empire in modern-day Iran. The purpose was to protect themselves from nomadic invaders. It was constructed with 100 million man-days of labor, which is equivalent to around 300,000 workers toiling for 5 years straight. Considering the average labor cost, material expenses, and other related expenditures, The total cost of the project could have reached an astronomical sum of approximately $130 billion in today's dollars. Needless to say, that it failed its intended purpose as Huns devised techniques to overcome the wall without much hassle. Stonehenge. The whole thing was supposed to be 18 inches tall, but the work crew misread the runes. The Vietnam War at $176 billion. Countless dead for no reason, and nothing positive came of it. Those guys who bought tickets to the Titanic sub. New Zealand spent about $25 million, NZD, on a flag referendum. Before it started, the public were against it, saying we would never change the flag. The government persisted anyway. 2 years later, the public voted to keep our current flag. So we did massive fucking waste of time and money for a result they should have been expecting from the very beginning. Not the dumbest, but a personal favorite of mine. The US military spent hundreds of millions developing the XM-29 rifle. It was basically a grenade launcher with some extra bells and whistles. They wanted it to replace the M16, so every grunt would be carrying one. In a shockingly unshocking turn of events, that's a freaking war crime. $300+ million later, and a single Google search could have prevented it. Everyone here has better answers, but I've gotta mention Twitter. What an absolutely idiotic way to buy a company. Acquire because someone told you can't. Fire 80% of the staff. Abolish the branding completely. Remove mod support. Offer worthless utilities that used to be free as part of a premium service, then force push notifications to every single user that are really just your personal tweets. And when people still won't listen to you, masquerade as an anonymous user on your own app company. Artificially inflate your own follower count, and be your own biggest supporter. He bought himself a huge amount of political influence, which he may well leverage for far higher value in his other companies. It's a bit like the barons that bought newspapers to gain influence and control opinions. It's not about the profit margins of what they buy, it's what extras it all gets them. Nuclear weapons, $5,600 billion US. To create a weapon that is designed not to be used, but instead to create a scenario, mutually assured destruction, so they are never used. Me forgetting to turn off the lights, according to my dad. What was the biggest waste of money in human history? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.